Hello there, and welcome to the Time Machine with Trish and Mike. I'm Mike.
And I'm Trish.
And we're glad you're with us once again. How are you, Trish? I have no idea what's going on with my voice, by the way, for this episode. It's like, it sounds like it's half coming and going, so this could be interesting.
You're like, bear with us. Well,
Yeah.
you know, it was an eventful night last night.
Yes, St. Patrick's Day, indeed. The conclusion of Cinco de Marzo.
Yes. Was everyone's livers prepared? Anyone participate in Cinco de Marzo?
Apparently my voice did for some reason. I don't know. No, my St. Patrick's Day was about as exciting as my St. Patrick's Day last year in that I didn't do diddly poo.
I had a drink. I do
Was it
like to
green?
make dark and well, no, I took Irish class in university, and I had a university professor who has since passed away, but Dr. Nielsen would be like, "Do not tell me you have drank green beer." He's like, "You can get out of my classroom if you tell me that." So I like to make dark and stormies, though. That's my drink of choice for St. Patrick's Day.
So what is? I'm going to sound stupid and ignorant, but I'm an American, and that's how the rest of the world looks at us anyway. What is Irish class? Like, do they just teach you the history of Ireland or something?
No, I should restate that. It wasn't just Irish class. It was like I took Irish Gaelic. It was a 2-year program.
Okay.
Sadly, I only got to take 1 year because there wasn't enough interest for return. Like I only had a class of, I think there was 8 of us.
So you took the Irish class. You didn't get the Gaelic class.
No, so St. FX University has...
No, it's a bad joke, Trish. You just let it die, which is what you should have done.
Our university has really, really high Scottish Gaelic classes, and I couldn't get into that program. And so I said, well, I'll just try the Irish Gaelic class, because why not take the other dead language that no one speaks?
Okay.
So... I know a little bit of Irish Gaelic, so that's about it. But I also took a history of the Gaels class, so I did actually take like a history course on Scottish and Scotland and Ireland.
Okay. And what chapter in your Scottish textbook was Loch Ness Monster? When was that covered?
We did not ever cover Nessie,
but we did on our show.
We did in the archives.
You can go back and find it. It's like episode 4 or something. I don't know.
I think it is episode 4.
Just listen to all of them. They're all there.
Yeah. Just find it. Tell us.
Yeah. Tell us what episode we talked about. Well, St. Patrick's Day is, of course, a time of celebration. Mm-hmm. And there is another interesting celebratory day in history. Well, I guess it is a day in history because that's the day that, the thing happened, but it celebrates every year. And that is the presentation of the Stanley Cup.
Yep. Very big deal in hockey and in Canada.
And on March 18th, 1892, General Lord Stanley pledges the Silver Cup, as it was known at the time. Of course, has now become known as the Stanley Cup, that is presented to the winner of the NHL season. And Trish, since you are the Canadian on this show, and General Lord Stanley is a Canadian, tell us, who was he?
Technically not Canadian.
I'm proving my American ignorance once again. Twice in the show. We're doing great.
We're doing good. So Frederick Stanley, who is the 16th Earl of Derby, he's born the 15th of January, 1841. He's going to pass away the 14th of June, 1908. Was a Conservative Party politician in the United Kingdom. He develops a friendship with the very first Prime Minister of Canada, Sir John A. Macdonald, and he's actually appointed by the monarchy to be the Governor General of Canada. So he comes over. He's a very big sportsman, so he gets invested in hockey and the hockey movement that's going on at this time period, which is why then he goes on to say, hey, for this hockey tournament, I'll just donate this cup.
Yes. And it was
Yeah.
originally presented to the best amateur hockey club at the time. And in 1909, it became contested by professional hockey teams. And since 1926, only teams in the National Hockey League compete for the trophy.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because originally it started as an amateur cup. And in the 2004-2005 NHL season was canceled because of a lockout, a dispute between the players and the owners. It was the first time since the flu pandemic of 1919 that the cup was not awarded.
Interesting.
And so here became the interesting conundrum. There were several different groups in Canada that literally took this to court, saying that the trophy or that the Stanley Cup still should be presented. And there were different groups and leagues that were making claims saying, well, it should be presented. If there's no NHL, then you should give it to us because we're the champion. Then it would get into a sort of a debate about who would have been worthy.
Canadians and their love of hockey, man. We take it serious.
Yeah. And so on February 7th, 2006, they actually reached a settlement in which they determined the trophy could be awarded to non-NHL teams should the league not have a season. Now, at this point, the NHL was back up and running, so it was not going to be an issue for the 2005-2006 season, which would have been the subsequent time that it was presented. However, when there was an NHL lockout in 2012, there was some debate about if the season was going to happen. Ultimately, the season did happen, and it wound up being a moot point. But the trustees who are in charge of the Stanley Cup stated that the agreement did not oblige them to have to present it to a non-NHL team. But, of course, we wound up having a hockey season that year, and it wasn't an issue again. So we keep dodging these legal challenges to the cup. Yeah.
I'm rolling my eyes. I know this is like, I'm going to have to revoke my Canadian card or something, but it's like, it's hockey. It's whatever. I like watching hockey live. Going to an arena and seeing it is great. On TV, it's just like, whatever. Have you ever seen the cup? Have you been near the cup?
I have never gotten to be near the cup.
Okay.
I would love to sometime get to see it or get to take a picture with it. I know it's typically on display at the Hockey Hall of Fame, except for when the teams have it, which we'll get to here in a second. So one of the interesting things is that the team, gets the cup and every player gets to have their own day with the cup. So that's kind of a fun tradition.
Well, and there's also like all of the staff that are a part of the team. It's not just the players, because there's actually a assistant coach, I believe, for one of the teams. I totally can't remember, who is from my hometown originally, and he got to take it home, and my mom and dad got to see the cup.
That is cool. So the Stanley Cup championship winning team is allotted 100 days with the cup. And it must always be accompanied by at least one representative from the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Yep, they're strict.
Yes, because they don't want anything to happen to the cup.
No.
Because, it's been around for a while. So, Trish, here's a fun fact that involves both of our teams and the Stanley Cup.
Ooh, okay.
So when the cup is presented by the commissioner, it's presented to the captain of the team.
Right.
And typically the captain of the team takes the cup, hoists it over his head, and skates around. Then he hands it off to another member of the team, and so on and so forth. But there are three times that is not the process in which it occurred. Like the captain typically skates with it first. However, there are three times that did not happen. One of which involves your Edmonton Oilers.
Okay. I'm trying to think if I can remember this.
Well, we'll see. I don't know you're going to remember this one. In 1987, Edmonton defeated Philadelphia for the cup, and Wayne Gretzky handed the cup to Steve Smith. The previous year, Smith had made an error in a game that cost the Oilers a chance of getting to what would have been their fourth consecutive Stanley Cup Finals, because this is on the run that the Oilers had in the 80s. And so he he accepted the cup, but he didn't hoist it. So he took it and immediately handed it to him. So it was like
Oh, I
his
love that.
redemptive moment.
Yeah. Gretzky's such a good guy.
Yeah, it's a good guy. So then one of the other times it happened, I love this. This was like one of my favorite moments. So in 2001, when my Colorado Avalanche win
Okay.
the Stanley Cup, Joe Sakic was the captain. So he takes it from the commissioner and hands it to Ray Bork, who was just a phenomenal player. He'd spent his whole career, like 20, 21 years, playing for the Boston Bruins. And this was the time where the Bruins really weren't good for a long run there. And so he got traded in 2000 to Colorado. And then the following year, Colorado won the cup. So it was just like he got to have this moment, So it's such a
It's so
good
nice when
moment.
players recognize like the amount of time and energy and passion that other players have, right? And to
Yeah.
let them have that moment.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's like when Dale Earnhardt finally won the Daytona 500. He'd been trying for 20 years. He'd never won it. And so when he's pulling down pit road after the race, literally every man on every pit crew from all the other teams and everybody is like lined up down pit
Aw.
road to like high five him and stuff. It's cool when you have moments
It's
like
just
that.
real sportsmanship, really.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the third time?
So the third time was in 1993 after the Montreal Canadiens defeated the LA Kings. Guy Carbonneau handed the cup to Dennis Savard, who was a player that many fans had urged the Canadiens to draft back in 1980. So again, it's kind of more of a, hey, you've been here a long time,
working hard.
This is your moment,
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Mm-hmm. Do you know there are qualifications to having your name inscribed on the cup?
There are like you don't just automatically as the team.
There's a certain set of requirements you have to meet.
I did not know this.
As a player, you must have played or dressed as the backup goaltender for at least half of a championship team's regular season games, or you must have played or dressed as the backup goaltender for at least one game of the Stanley Cup Finals, and you must be on the roster when the team wins the Stanley Cup.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
They're just like, you were really a part of this team before your name's getting on that cup.
So it's like technically if you say a team picks you up late in the season, like at the trade deadline or something, and you play, let's say 20 games for them, and then you get hurt sometime before the Stanley Cup Finals, you technically don't qualify to get your name on the cup.
I would be so pissed.
However, as with anything, there are exceptions to this rule. There have been certain times, like for famously, Vladimir Kostanov was injured in a car accident in 1997, and the Detroit Red Wings honored him by getting his name on the cup the following year when they won. So
that's cool.
So you do get,
you can make it happen if it's
there are exceptions. Yeah. There are also errors on the cup.
Most things, I'm assuming.
There are name misspellings. For example, Jacques Plante, famous player from your Canadian land up there.
Canadian land.
He won the cup 5 times in a row, and his name is spelled differently every time.
Oh my goodness, are you kidding me? They didn't fix it the first time?
Nope. Another example, the Toronto Maple Leafs, which is Leafs.
Yeah, S. Not leaves.
Right, Leafs.
Leafs.
Was spelled Leaes in 1963.
Oh no. That's brutal.
The New York Islanders in 1981, they are spelled Ilanders. So there's no S. I mean, it's literally a silent S, and I guess the engraver didn't know. I mean, like you can kind of see where, all right, some of these back 50s, 60s, like Google's not a thing. So
right. Still.
Or maybe you're engraving.
You're just going fast.
You pick up the wrong letter to engrave it with. I mean, I can kind of see some of that.
Can't we go? I mean, I know it's historical artifact, but like, you think you could go back in on that panel and just like pop it and put a new one in and spell things correctly?
Well, there are corrections on the cup. And in fact, in 1996, when Colorado won their first Stanley Cup, Adam Deadmarsh's name was spelled Adam Dead March. So instead of Dead Marsh, Mars, it was Dead March, March.
Oh, goodness.
So that was later corrected.
Well, it's
But again,
'cause
okay, 1996, Google's not a thing, although you would think that they would have given.
okay, but it's important. These are people's names.
But would you believe as recently as 2010,
That there's a mistake.
they're
Oh,
still
no.
making errors? Yeah.
Because I'm trying to think, I was in Toronto because we went to the Hockey Hall of Fame when Adriana was 2 or just under 2. So like 9 years ago. So I can't believe that they're still making mistakes in 2010.
And I don't know that this is an error, but this is kind of interesting. In 2019, Patrick Maroon was on the St. Louis Blues when they won the cup. So he's Patrick Maroon. And then this past season, when the one we finished up after COVID, he was on Tampa Bay Lightning, which won the cup. So he's Pat Maroon on there.
Oh.
So I don't know if that was intentional or an error, but
right,
it's just crazy. Like you would think we would have
just some consistency.
Yeah, but alas, we don't. So
that's funny.
That makes for a good story.
Thank you, Gigi, Lord Stanley, for our cup. And actually, do you know? Like, I realize as a Canadian, I'm just throwing out words, but like Governor General, does that mean anything?
No. We have governors in our state, so they're like the head of a state government,
right?
But what would be a governor general? Is that more of a national position, or
so the GG? It's basically a ceremonial position now, but because the Queen or the monarchy can't be in every place that they rule over, right? They can't be in Britain and Canada at the same time. They appoint a governor general who acts on behalf of the Queen. So they open Parliament, they dissolve Parliament, they pass laws. So our bills cannot become laws until they receive what's called royal assent. And the Governor General is the individual that signs the bill into law on behalf of the Queen of England.
Okay, so first I was thinking it was more like an ambassador, but these people
actually have
some power.
And our Governor General, the last one, just made news because she is the first Governor General to resign before the 5-year period. And it was over accusations of cruel and unusual treatment of her staff, that she was such a bully. And what's really upsetting is on paper, she looked amazing, like scientist, astronaut, singer.
Checks all the boxes.
Yeah. She checks all the boxes, right? And then, I guess she was just, it was a toxic and house of horrors is the quote that is used in a lot of articles. It's like, oh, geez.
That does not sound good.
Yeah. And then we have lieutenant governors in each province. So because Canada is so damn big, the Governor General can't be in every place at one time. So there's lieutenant governors that report to the Governor General.
For a second, I thought you said left-handed governors, and I'm like,
no, lieutenant.
Are we disqualifying people now because of their dominant hand? Like, geez.
Well, because you guys have lieutenants, right? And we have lieutenants.
So we have so the person under the governor in a state is a lieutenant governor. Yeah.
So lieutenant here in Canada, we go with the British term. We fancy, yo.
You're something. So tell us about your beavers.
Oh, Mike, that is like a really pointed question. Speaking of, Governor Generals and Canadiana, we have a very important date, March 24th, 1975. The beaver becomes an official symbol of Canada.
That you have an official symbol.
Well, I guess you have the eagle. Is it actually in law that it's an official symbol?
You use it on everything, so it's got to be a real thing. Yeah, use it on
everything.
Yeah.
The act to provide for the recognition of the beaver as a symbol of the sovereignty of Canada receives royal assent on March 24th, 1975. So, I mean, obviously the beaver's been an important symbol in Canadian history long before 1975. I mean, our whole country was built on the fur trade and the high demand for beaver fur that was over in Europe at the time. It was actually close to extinction by the mid-19th century. there was an estimated 6 million beavers in Canada before the start of the fur trade. And during its peak, 100,000 pelts were being shipped off to Europe each year, mostly to be made into hats and gloves. The Canadian beaver was in danger of being wiped out, but luckily at that time, Europeans then decided fur hats are out, silk hats are in, and the demand for the beaver pelt all but disappeared. And then people are just like, hey, let's just live here after the fur trade. Like, it's okay. We'll set up settlement. Thanks to the Conservation Act, though, and the demand of silk hats, the beaver, which I will let you know is the largest rodent in Canada, is alive and well and seen all over the country.
So your official animal in
Is
Canada is a rodent.
Basically. Yeah. Although I will have to add that although it's a rodent, Alberta is one of only 2 places in the world that does not have rats. We are officially rat free in Alberta and in Antarctica.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So like, if they're running across the border from British Columbia, they just go, no, we're not going there.
Well, we have an extensive border control process. There's like I forget the acronym for like the rat border patrol people, but it's so many kilometers out from the Alberta border that they have this like team that makes sure they're investigating trucks and anything coming in, because it would be absolutely damaging to the agricultural industry here. Like rats eat so much. So there's a hotline. There's a hotline you call in case you see a rat. And you can't have rats as pets. There's no pet licenses.
Some countries. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say my daughter really wants like a fancy rat, which is just a fancy name for a pet rat. And I'm like, no, you can't. You legally can't. The universities here have to get a special license to do testing on rats.
Can you, some countries spend millions on defense. You spend millions keeping rats out.
Yeah.
So now I'm curious, because this has just changed this whole conversation now. I have so many questions. So can you have rats or mice as food? Like if you have can you have a pet snake up there?
You can have pet snakes here in Alberta, yeah. And you can have pet mice. You can have pet ferrets.
Okay.
Just you can't have rats.
You just can't have rats. Okay. So,
yeah.
So you can go to the pet store and buy mice to feed your snake. Okay. You just can't have rats.
No rats. So, and I don't really know, in Nova Scotia, I don't recall ever seeing rats, but I grew up, like I said, rural. We had lots of little field mice that would sometimes get into our house that my dad would just get rid of. But apparently when they bulldozed one of the buildings in town, my dad said there was a bunch of rats that came out of it and they dealt with them all. But I don't remember. My first rat was last year when I was in LA and seeing a rat, and it was only little baby rats. And I freaked out and hid behind my boyfriend. I was like, oh my God, like a rat.
Okay. So I have to tell this story. So we had a rat problem in my old high school auditorium. We had a rat problem. And it would not be that uncommon to occasionally see a rat running around.
Oh, gross.
We named them because, we're there after school late, working on productions and stuff.
What was your rat's name?
Oh, we had, George, and we had, Seth, and we had names for all these people. I don't remember what all of them were. But so one day we're rehearsing a scene for a musical that we were doing. We were doing the pajama game, which is there's a scene in there at a picnic. And so it's a bunch of people that work at a pajama factory, and they're wanting a raise. Okay, it's legit. It's a real musical. Doris Day was in it. There's a movie version of it you can watch anyway. So
I'm very curious now, but continue.
So there's this scene at this picnic where one of the bosses of the pajama factory gets up and he's giving this speech, and we're rehearsing it, and right on cue as he finishes his speech, we're facing him, so we're kind of facing like the wings of the stage, and there's a rat that runs across one of the pipes. And everybody's like, because there are some people that don't know that we had.
They didn't know Seth.
Right, and so he goes running, and the guy's just kind of standing there like feeling proud of himself, like, man, I must have really nailed that take. And we're like, no, there's one of the rats ran by.
See, we had a squirrel in our building a couple of years ago that we named Nutter Butter, but
well, that's nice.
Yeah. Nutter Butter had to get removed because living in a school attic is not ideal.
No, probably not. And then a few years ago, they actually demolished the old auditorium. So I'm assuming they got rid of all the rats.
I'm assuming the rats left. Yeah.
I'm assuming. And they rebuilt it, and it's really nice. Actually, just a couple months before COVID, I got to go back for a chorus concert at the high school. And,
that'd be nice.
So it was nice to see it all renovated. Yeah, it was really, really nice inside.
Oh. Well, I definitely prefer beavers over rats.
Yeah.
They're cuter.
Yeah, I would grant you
we used to have them in my grandmother had a pond, and they would come, and she didn't like the fact that they would chew my grandfather's trees. So, but she didn't want them to be killed because some people will actually go and exterminate them, right? So she would get a humane trap and catch them and then go and release them somewhere else.
Oh, that's nice. At least somebody cares. Somebody's trying to protect the beaver.
The beaver.
And if you need to buy a beaver trap, a good way to do it would be with an American Express card.
Yeah, although it's funny, we used to have all those commercials for American Express, and it was like I had never seen one as a young person for a long time.
Well, I just got to thinking, like, there's not a Canadian Express, because I would have heard of that, right?
Yeah.
Can you get an American Express card in Canada?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, because you have like Visa and MasterCard and probably Discover, I'm guessing.
There is people who have it, I believe. Okay. I just the ones I know the most are Visa and MasterCard.
Yeah, I kind of figured.
But like other people, especially if they have business accounts, especially if they're doing international business.
Did you have Wells Fargo Bank?
Nope.
No. Okay. All right. So people here in America have certainly heard of Wells Fargo, and American Express was founded on March 18th, 1850. That's where we're going with this, by Henry Wells and William Fargo.
Hey, wait, that's the name you just said.
Grasshopper. You're learning. So it was a merger of American Express. Here's a question for you.
Ooh, question time.
What business was American Express originally in?
What business was American Express originally in?
Mm-hmm. We're talking 1850s. Credit cards are not a thing yet. Yet this company's now been around for 171 years.
Newspaper?
No.
Oh.
But it has to do with deliveries. Because you get a newspaper delivered.
Right.
It originally began as an express mail business.
Oh, so like FedEx.
Yeah, kind of like a precursor to FedEx or UPS or something. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So they originally began as an express mail business in Buffalo, New York. So they started their expansion to financial services in the later part of the 1850s, like 1857 or so. Okay. They launched a money order business. Money orders are a thing in Canada, right? Yeah. Like Western Union or...
You can go and send. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We do it through our... there's actual specific depots, but you can also do it through our post office.
Gotcha. And that was what they started as a competitor to the U.S. Post Office.
Yeah.
So... because they had the express mail, they could get these money orders transmitted.
Well, and the U.S. Postal Service is actually a for-profit organization, right?
Yes. Canada Post is its own entity.
Under the government, yeah.
Yeah. In the late 1880s, J.C. Fargo, who was William's brother, was traveling over in Europe. And he was... despite the fact that he was the president of the American Express Company, which, okay, granted, in Europe, they don't give two hoots what you are, because how do we know you're not just making stuff up? It was difficult for him to obtain cash because he had letters of credit from American Express that, was, a statement from the bank saying, hey, we'll support this person up to this amount. And so he went to one of the employees at the American Express Company and said, we've got to come up with a better solution than just carrying around letters of credit, because like I said, the banks didn't want to honor them over there. So the American Express traveler's check was introduced in 1891.
Oh, I totally remember those. Like, I remember people going and getting traveler's checks before you went anywhere.
That would be the thing. Before you would travel, you would get a check written out from your bank or whomever. And there's still a thing, but obviously with credit cards, they're really not used anymore.
No.
Like, I remember them as a kid, but by the time I was working like in retail, I've never processed one.
Any of them.
Like we were trained on it, but it was like one of these, you're never going to do it. It's funny because at the time, credit cards were, swipe them, but
you take the imprint of them on the machine.
Right, but that was the thing. Like I remember that as a kid, you would take the imprint, and I actually one night at Target, I had a customer that something wasn't going through. There was something with the thing, and so we were taught how if this ever happens, and so I under the register had the thing to make the impression of the card. I had the form and had to do the whole thing. So that I did, but I've never had to process a traveler's check.
And I remember my mom getting some before we'd go in. Like we barely would go into the US when we drive to Ontario, but sometimes we'd deke down into Buffalo. And I remember just in case she would bring some, like in case the credit cards or whatever didn't work.
And that makes sense when you're and Buffalo is probably a perfect example of a city that is used to dealing with these sorts of transactions, probably more so than, or another random city. So for those that are listening that don't know a traveler's check, you would go to your bank and they would give you in denominations, 10s, 20s, 50s, whatever. And then you would sign it at the bank. And then when you would go to use it as a method of payment, you would have to sign it and the signatures have to match. Mm-hmm. And that's how it would, then the store would take that and they would just give you cash back. So like, let's say you were giving them a $20 check and your item was $16. They're going to give you $4 regular cash back. Mm-hmm. And then the store then takes the traveler's check just as they would a regular check that somebody has written. And then they turn that into their bank. And that's how they would get their money.
Just gets all processed through the banking.
Exactly. Yeah.
And now it's like, it's so funny you think about it. And it's just like, oh yeah, you just take your credit card and you just go. You actually tend to get the best currency rate through
exchange rate.
Yeah, exchange rate. Thank you. I was like, the name was mistaken, leaving me.
Well, speaking of leaving, ships leave all the time, and that takes us to our next.
Yeah, and you're hoping when ships leave
that come back.
The ships come back. That's not always the case. So our story takes us down to March 19th, 1965, when the wreck of the SS Georgina is discovered. Its value at over $50 million and has said to have been the most powerful Confederate cruiser. It's discovered by a teenage diver and pioneer underwater archaeologist E. Lee Spence, exactly 102 years after its destruction, which is really, really interesting.
You find it on the anniversary.
Yeah, that you find it on the anniversary. Just really interesting. The Georgina sailed for the Confederate States Navy, during the American Civil War. It was reputedly intended to become the most powerful cruiser in the Confederate fleet once her guns were mounted. She actually had, she was outfitted for 14 guns. She was never actually used in battle, however. And due to the secrecy surrounding the construction, loading, and sailing, there was just a lot of speculation on the intended role. Was it going to be a cruiser, a merchantman, or a privateer for the Confederate Navy? On her maiden voyage from Scotland, where she was built, she encountered Union Navy ships engaged in a blockade of Charleston, South Carolina, was heavily damaged and then scuttled by her captain. But not only was it scuttled, right, the poor ship, right, if we're going to personify it, she's then burned by another commanding officer, right? Lieutenant Commander John L. Davis decides to set the wreck afire so that guerrilla bands from shore couldn't salvage the cargo. She burned for several days, accompanied by large black powder explosions, obviously as munition on board is burning.
I get the theory, though, destroy it so nobody can...
right.
I get it.
It makes sense. You scuttle it so that it can't be taken, but then it was in shallow water, so it was still sticking out of the shoal, and so then they set it on fire. What's interesting, though, is the Georgina and her cargo were owned by a banking and shipping magnate, George Trenholm of Charleston, who is the treasurer of the Confederacy and is actually the primary historical figure behind the fictional character Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind. So it's kind of a neat pop culture connection.
Yeah.
Today, the Georgina sits on the bottom of this harbor shoal with her huge boiler, actually only 5 feet or 1.5 meters under the surface. So you can go and dive it and see it very clearly. She's
could-
covered with.
Sorry, I was
Sorry?
gonna say you could and technically like go stand on top of
You
that.
could go
and have your
stand on
head-
it.
Yeah.
When I read that, I was like, oh my goodness, that's not like obviously with the sands coming and going, but it was very, very shallow. It's just kind of crazy to think it's this very valuable historic shipwreck is, 5 feet underwater. And giving back to the ocean, she's covered with sea fan and sea whips and living coral. So there's lots of fish and creatures living in it.
That's
Large sections of the hull are still intact. So just really interesting.
Yeah. So you could really, it's nothing to dive down and take a look at this thing.
Yeah. So what's interesting is not only is the Georgina the only wreck that's there, there's actually another wreck on top of her from
Is this like stacking 2 Oreos on top of each other or something?
shipwreck sandwich.
Yeah.
It's the shattered remains of the side wheel steamer Mary Bowers, which struck the wreck of the Georgina while also attempting to run the blockade into Charleston. On October 6th, 1864, the wreck was subsequently run into by the blockade, and it was bound actually for Halifax, Nova Scotia to Charleston. So another interesting Canadian
U.S.
connection with our shipping industry. You can go like dive in 2 shipwrecks for the price of 1.
It's a good double feature for you to go check out.
There is a mystery surrounding potential gold that was on board.
Oh.
So
do I need to go diving? Is there
I
gold
think you
still on
do.
there?
There may or may not. I don't know if they when they set it on fire, if they took it or not, but there's boxes of pins and buttons and sundries and musicians and the medicines, which were really, really expensive. But supposedly there was 350 pounds or 160 kilograms of gold believed to be hidden on the wreck. That's never been discovered.
I'm more concerned. I assume you meant munitions.
Did I not say munitions?
I swear you said musicians, and I'm like,
I may have had a slip there. Not musicians. There are no musicians on board.
Like, are these the people left from
Munitions.
the Titanic? Like, the violin players. As the ship is going down, are they still under there?
No musicians.
So somebody would had to have gotten this gold by now. I can't
You'd think
imagine
so.
that there's that much gold potentially sitting there, and somebody hasn't went and kicked around in there.
Or that someone at the time didn't know that it was like, there's multiple people that are going to know about this gold, but they just said it's never been found and they're unsure if it was ever even put on board.
Yeah, because there's no way to know. This gold did not make it on the ship, or if it did, somebody took it off when they were burning the thing.
Well, and like literally it's 5 feet of water. Just go and start sifting around.
Right. That's what I'm saying. This is not
You're gonna find gold bars on the floor of the ocean.
Right. That's where I'm going with this. This is not a hard excursion to do.
No,
it's not like
you're
we're talking
the Marianas Trench.
Right. It's not something out in the middle of an ocean. This is close to the shore in shallow-ish water. Your weekend recreational diver could go down there with a tank.
Yeah.
I mean,
just start searching around.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
There's no way it's still there.
Be interesting to see whatever happened to it. Somebody somewhere in the world was lucky with 350 pounds of gold.
Well, if you were and you're listening.
Yeah.
And you want to sponsor us.
There's a family connection.
Yeah.
I just want to know the mystery. Like, I want to know just the answer. I don't even need the gold. Just what happened to it.
You know what you could buy with all that gold?
Lots of things, but I'm thinking you're going to tell me something interesting.
Yes. You could buy a lot of subway rides in New York.
But would we want to buy a lot of subway rides in New York?
Probably if you have that gold, you probably could, afford to Uber. But on March 24th, 1900, so we're talking 121 years ago.
Which is really crazy that they set up this system, but continue.
Yeah. And it even kind of predates the railroad, which we're getting to. So the New York Rapid Transit Railroad broke ground, which is now known as the New York City Subway. Mm-hmm. And it ultimately opened October 27th, 1904. The New York City Subway is one of the world's oldest and most used public transit systems in the world. It also has the most stations. How many subway stations are there on the New York City Subway?
How many subway stations? I am going to think that there's a lot. Because in my mind, I can see like...
you could picture it. You can
picture like the map and like it's multi-layered.
railing and
yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh God. I'm either going to go way too low or way too high because that's just how I am. For some reason, though, 52 is sticking out.
Oh, you're not even close.
Oh, damn it.
To be fair, I didn't really have an idea of how many there were.
I'm thinking, well, Edmonton, we have like 12, if that.
We have, I think we have about 10 on our rail system that we have here, but it's not a subway system, and it's terribly random.
Yeah, ours is above ground too, right? Like you have it above ground. Yeah, we have only sections. Some sections in Edmonton are underground.
None of ours is because they used existing rail lines basically, and the schedule is terrible. And I could go off on a tangent. And
me too.
Anyway, 472.
472?
Yes.
I was like way off. Wow, New York, I knew you were big, but geez.
And it has operated 24/7 every day of the year, barring emergencies and disasters, of course.
Right.
It contains 248 miles of routes, or about 399 kilometers.
Wow.
And approximately 5.6 million riders per day.
5.6 million riders per day?
Yep.
Wow.
This is like pre-COVID. I don't know what their current numbers are running.
Yeah.
I would imagine significantly less.
Significantly less.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible.
Yes. So how this came to be is Alfred Beach built a demonstration for an underground transit system back in 1869.
So they were already thinking about it 40 years before.
30 years. Yeah.
Oh, 30.
So his underground tunnel only went about a football field, but it proved the proof of concept that this is a viable thing to do. And they never extended the tunnel for political and financial limits and whatnot. And today, no part of this line actually exists as part of the current system. It's near where City Hall is.
So there's just an underground section that's a football field long that's just not attached to anything or used for anything.
Correct. So
Weird.
What happened? So this was in 1870 that this opened, and the Great Blizzard of 1888 demonstrated the benefits of having an underground transportation system. So they began working on a construction plan that was approved in 1894, and construction began on this day in March 24th, 1900.
Wow. See, that's when you are thinking clearly and proactively.
Yes.
Right? You're like, okay, there's a problem. We have a solution.
Let's get solve it. Check out the hook while my DJ revolves it. Ding, 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 ding. It was ice, baby, that caused the problem.
Perfection. That's it. That's it. We're done. The show's over. That's the crowning moment.
We're almost out of time anyway, and let's be honest, Vanilla Ice is probably going to sue us for me using the song.
You oversampled. Aren't you allowed like 30 seconds to sample? That wasn't 30 seconds. You're good.
Well, he has no room to talk anyway because he's the one who lifted the beat from Under Pressure by Queen and David Bowie in the first place. And then tries to say that his beat is different because, well, I mean technically I guess is, but Under Pressure is like ding, 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 ding. And then he says that his is like ding, 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 ding. It's that extra ding in there that
he's like, nope, it's unique.
It's unique enough that,
No.
What is unique, though, is Rick Hansen.
Rick Hansen is a very unique individual. Yep. 3-time Paralympic gold medalist. Leaves Vancouver March 21st, 1985 on his Man in Motion World Tour. And the tour will become an epic 2-year circumnavigation of the world in his wheelchair. He and his team will travel through 34 countries, over 40,000 kilometers, or 24,856 miles. And the tour will raise $26 million for accessibility awareness and become a catalyst to the enormous change and removal of physical barriers in how people with disabilities are perceived. So he is Canadian, born and raised in Port Alberni, BC, August 26, 1957. He's going to go live part of his time in Fort St. John, Abbotsford, and Williams Lake in BC. So he actually gets into a car accident in 1973. He's on a fishing trip with a friend, and he's thrown from the back of a pickup truck, and his spinal cord is injured, and he's paralyzed from the waist down. And he ends up being encouraged by a volleyball coach to enter into wheelchair sports. He's actually going to be recruited for the Vancouver Cable Cars, which was a wheelchair basketball team. He goes off into university at University of British Columbia, and he becomes the first person with a physical disability to graduate with a degree in physical education. He becomes friends with Terry Fox, another very famous Canadian athlete with a disability.
Who raised a lot of money for charity as well.
Yeah, who raised a lot of money with his Marathon of Hope. And Terry Fox also played for the cable cars for a while before he had his prosthetic leg and was training with the leg. So he was in a wheelchair for a little while. So in 5 years, Rick wins 19 wheelchair marathons, 3 world titles, 15 medals, 6 at the Paralympic Games, 9 at the Pan Am Games. And he is Canada's Disabled Athlete of the Year in 1979, 1980, and 1982. And he's going to go on and become on all of these boards and sit on all of these foundations and celebrate the 30-year anniversary of the marathon, the Man in Motion tour. And just his whole mentality is, how do we get people with disabilities more involved? How do we remove barriers? How do we raise money? How do we have equality? And that's his whole
cause. Yeah.
His cause, like his whole calling. So really, really amazing guy. But yeah, I met him once.
Nice.
And what's interesting is we have what's known as the Olin Center at St. FX University, which is like our big gymnasium. And he was doing a speech. And my brother waited in line to get an autograph. And Rick's handlers were moving him along so quickly that he didn't really he got to like say hi to my brother Norman, but he didn't get to give the autograph. And then afterwards, he was signing autographs and Norm was waiting. And Rick Hansen, they were trying to get him to go because he had another tour, I think in Halifax or something, and he had to get on the road. And he waited until my brother showed up, signed it, said hi to him, and then left.
That's awesome.
So he remembered him. Oh, I thought that was so cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is really cool. I love that when you hear stories like that where they recognize or they realize this person or whatever. And
yeah. So I know my mom said she was really appreciative that he did that because my brother was really, really into basketball and just really looked up to Rick Hansen. So
nice.
Really
and he's still around. He's still
making
around. A difference.
Yeah. As of February 2017, the Rick Hansen Foundation Accessibility Certification is launched, and it's the only program that rates, certifies, and showcases accessible buildings. So he's gone, like I said, he's done different boards and raised different money. He's received the Queen Elizabeth II Golden Jubilee Commemorative Medal from the Governor General. He's inducted into Canada's Sports Hall of Fame in 2006. He was one of the flame carriers for the Olympic Games in 2010 in Vancouver.
I remember seeing him during the opening ceremonies that year. Yeah. As you're saying that, I do remember
seeing him. Yeah.
Seeing him. Yeah.
So yeah, he's still busy, still launching programs to ensure accessibility for people with disabilities into buildings and schools. And so yeah, he's a really wonderful person and really proud that he's a Canadian.
That's great. That's great. And I'm proud that you're a Canadian because that's what makes this show interesting. We get to learn all sorts of fun Canadian facts that us ignorant, because I can't even come up with my own word, Americans learn.
We're not going to perpetuate the stereotype.
No, we're just obnoxious and arrogant and ignorant, and
I'm not saying it.
Canadians don't think so much of us that way. I guess it's more the Europeans that do.
Well, yes and no. I think there was a show on CBC, the Rick Mercer. Well, it's called the Rick Mercer Report now, but he used to be on This Hour's 22 Minutes. And he would have a segment every once in a while called Talking to Americans, where he would go usually down into Washington, D.C. if there was something going on. And he would ask them questions like, do you know who the prime minister is? Do you know? And he would try and trick people being like, hey, do you know, we just added a 15th state. And all the Americans would be like, yeah, that's great. And there'd usually be like some little kid that would be like, wait a minute, Canada has provinces.
I would say something about him, but let's be honest, there are Americans that don't know some of this stuff about our own country.
There was something that I read, I forget what article, that said Canadians know more about American history and government than Americans know about Canada.
I believe that. I remember on during 4th of July, this was probably 10 years ago or so, they had went downtown and they were interviewing people like, hey, do you know this, or do you know this fact about America? You're like, oh, who was our third president? Or just kind of not the most common, but stuff that most people probably would know. And I remember seeing this one girl that I went to high school with, and I don't remember the question they asked her, but it was something she should have known.
Like something quite obvious, because I'm thinking, I don't think I know who the third prime minister would be.
No, I mean, Thomas Jefferson. But I mean, just, well, president. I don't know who the third prime minister was. I'm not Canadian, eh?
Yeah.
But it was something like who, it might have even been like who we were celebrating our independence from. Like it wasn't, it was a pretty basic question.
Right.
She didn't get it right. And I'm just like, oh dear, do not tell people where you went to high school. Like, no.
I don't want to be associated with this.
I'm just like, no.
Oh, yeah, that's always sad. I've had moments like that too, though, where you blank, right?
It happens.
We can give her the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I do get that. But I mean, it was just like.
Yeah. So there is kind of, there's a lot of Canadians that like to razz, I think, Americans for the fact that they don't know a lot about us. And I think a lot of Canadians like to feel a little bit superior, like, oh, I know this about America.
Well, I mean, you are technically looking down on us all the time.
I mean, you should look up to us. I'm just joking. I think, though, we get so much American television that we're very inundated with what's going on in your country. Like even with the podcast that I had with last week with Geeks Opinionated, and they were talking about when Trump was voted out, they had friends from Toronto calling them and talking about it. They're like, why are you invested in this? Like, why does it matter to you who our president is? And as a Canadian, it's like, it's really important who your president is with our relations and trading. And
we're real absolutely invested. Does. Yeah. Well, I mean, America is such a global superpower that ultimately the world has to be invested.
Oh, like, the world has to be invested in what's going on with your politics. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Because I mean, I would make the case that there's probably not too many people on the planet that don't know who the U.S. president is. Like, I couldn't tell you who the president of Zimbabwe is. I couldn't tell you who the president of Luxembourg is. But I bet you those people know who President Biden
of the United States. Yeah. Yep. People only know Trudeau because there was the whole, he's the sexiest leader in the world or something, and then about his socks. I was like, okay, great. I'm glad we're making world news because our prime minister has funky socks. Awesome.
I like funky socks.
Funky socks are really cool. Do not get me wrong. But it's like, I don't want the world to just be like, yeah, Canada's got a great leader because he's got good hair and funky socks.
He does have good hair. I mean.
Well, that was when the Conservatives were running against him, they made the comment about like, but at least he's got nice hair.
I mean, let's be honest. He's got better hair than Trump.
He did have better hair than Trump. Yeah.
Sorry. Donald. Just stating facts. What else is true is we are out of time.
We're out of the time.
So we have to bid you adieu. And if you did not make it this far, well, I hope that your hair turns out like Donald Trump's.
Ooh.
But since you
and you have no hat to cover it and hide it. No hat to be found.
No. And even then it doesn't help. But since you did make it to the end of the episode, we hope that you have hair like Trudeau.
Ooh, very flowing.
Yes.
It's a good product day.
It is. He needs to get a sponsorship when he's not the prime minister anymore. He needs to do like shampoo commercials or something.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you guys for joining us for another week. And as always, if you have questions, concerns, queries, or freakouts, you can reach us at thetimemachine@gmail.com. Time Machine on Instagram. Time Machine on YouTube with Trish and Mike. I got to add the Trish and Mike.
Well, yeah, because otherwise they're going to go to the wrong time machine and they're going to enter the wrong
Do not go to the wrong time machine.
No. That's the thing. Like once you time travel, you want to make sure you get back in the right time machine.
That is very true.
It's not like, if you hopped on the wrong subway, well, you can get off at the next station. You hop on the wrong time machine, you're going to wind up in like 1812.
Oh, we don't want to be there. That's a
No,
war.
there's a
Wartime.
warrior. Yeah, you just
We don't know who's on which side.
right. You want to go like to 2118 or something. Maybe that one works out better. I don't know.
2118 works out.
Can it be worse than 2020? I don't know. We'll find out in like
We'll
98
find out.
years.
Well, we won't be alive.
Won't, but you know,
we could, go into cryogenics. Maybe potentially make it.
I mean, yeah.
Episode 2.
Yeah.
If people need to go back and check out cryogenics.
Although if we go to 2118, at least we know how the 2030 Y2 2030 problem worked out.
Yeah, we'll figure out how that problem was resolved.
That's in the archives too.
Episode
something. It's in there.
5,
It's in the title. I know that.
It's in the title.
So I'll even make it easier for you. Just look for the one with the title. It's in there. Just listen to all the archives. If you've listened to it, go back and listen to it again.
Yeah.
There might be something you missed.
More questions, which you can contact us on the Anchor app and leave us a voice message, which we can include in the show.
Yes, because we have that capability. And
we have the technology.
We'll fix it in post. It's fine. We'll see you next time right here on The Time Machine.